Dr. Josephine Polich started Cearna, her company, in 2010 after successful careers in engineering and as a doctor of chiropractic medicine, focused on natural remedies utilized in the treatment of patients. Prior to forming Cearna, Dr. Polich did extensive development and testing of Cearna's patent-pending products using her analytic experience and strong research background from her years running and managing major engineering groups. One result of that work is Cearna's 2012 introduction of OcuMend, a healing gel pad developed to reduce bruising, swelling, and pain in the recovery from surgical procedures. Dr. Polich is the company visionary and has successfully guided the organization through the product development, FDA, IP strategy, and marketing. Beyond her role as CEO and founder of Cearna, Dr. Polich is principally responsible for all product development, research, and testing. She's also responsible for all external clinical studies with leading doctors and universities. Dr. Polich attained extensive engineering experience at prominent companies including IBM and Alcatel, as well as the technology startup TV. Her roles included major project implementations, and as director of engineering, she had responsibility for all key elements of product development, including design, manufacturing, and testing. Prior to launching Cearna, Dr. Polich ran a successful clinical practice which had a multi-month waiting list. She maintains her position as an adjunct professor at the National University of Health Sciences. Dr. Polich obtained a master's degree in engineering from the University of Virginia, along with 2 bachelor's degrees in engineering from the University of Michigan. She also holds a Doctor of Chiropractic degree from the National University of Health Sciences, and it's my pleasure to welcome to this stage Dr. Polich. Great to have you here. Dr. Polich, this class is a sampling of students from all over the university, engineers and non-engineers. And part of the purpose of the class is to encourage and maybe even spur some of these students to become entrepreneurs. Would you like to see all of these students in this classroom become entrepreneurs?
That would be awesome.
Now, do you think it's possible?
Well, they got to be willing to work really hard. So definitely possible, but it's not easy.
Now, I think I recall you saying at one time, not everyone should be an entrepreneur. What do you mean by that?
So first of all, you need to know it's not easy. I would say that, so as an entrepreneur, what you end up seeing is especially I'm from the Chicago area, and it's got especially a big tech entrepreneur Groupon has really spawned off a lot of things. And what you notice is there's people who have a need to be an entrepreneur, and there's people that are an entrepreneur because it sounds good. It's way too hard if it just sounds good. It's almost like one of the ways you'll know if you want to be an entrepreneur is you will not be happy working for big companies. My first company coming out of school was IBM. At that point, they were it. So it was like one of the best top 5 companies to work in the country. And I thought I was just dissatisfied. I would work there and I'd be like, yeah, this is boring. I'd been there, done that. And I would change jobs frequently because entrepreneur type people need change. There's people that can't stand change. They should be in the big companies. But if you really, really, really love change, entrepreneur is what you want to do. But if you really don't like change, it's important to know that about yourself because you're setting yourself up for a lot of frustration, a lot of failure, because you have to be able to manage change and really, really, really embrace it and really love it.
So when did your entrepreneurial journey begin?
So I worked for TeleTV, which was a startup, but it really wasn't a real startup. It was funded by Bell Atlantic and Pac Bell. You know, we were like a $70 billion startup or some ungodly bad thing like that. But the people that were there, it was in DC area, and there's a big tech startup world there. So the people that were there were relatively startup, but the funding is not like we live today. It's not, $1,000 you get going. We had a lot of money. We spent $1 million just on our logo. I mean, really? It's not real startup world. But anyway, it taught me a lot of things. And I think that for me, really the first thing was when I started my clinical practice. You don't really see it that way, but it ends up being learning how to run a clinical practice, which was pretty easy for me to do. It's really the beginning of it. But for me, it was the company Cearna came because of the fact that I discovered something that is really, really, really unique. We can drop a 3-pound weight, so it's actually a tube, a 3-pound weight on him.
Sounds fun.
That's so fun. And we can drop it, and it normally causes this nasty purple bruise on everyone. If we take our pad and put it on there, no bruise ever occurs. It can make the bruise go away faster, but if you get it on right away, the bruise never happens. When you discovered something that remarkable, it's almost like you don't have a choice. I'd done a little bit of work actually there's a product I brought out, Injuries, that I noticed this that was working, and I thought, oh, it works so well, we should just, like, if I just put it out there, give it to some of my chiropractor friends, they would use it and it would flourish. Doesn't happen that way. So I knew when I discovered this, which is even more effective, that we needed to do sales, we needed to do marketing, and I was not willing to do that unless I had patent protection. I wasn't going to put all of my time and effort into something and not have it have a big payout, and so that's why I started writing the first patent.
So before Cearna, you're thinking about becoming an entrepreneur. You're actually working for large companies or even large startups. What were some of the characteristics that you found yourself having to engage in order to become an entrepreneur? And let's start with one, pivoting. So you got a degree in mechanical engineering and math here at material science at the University of Michigan. And at IBM, is that what you were doing?
So I was a process engineer coming out of school. And as you and I talked, one of the things that you learn as an engineer is, and it was really more working as the director of engineering, I really noticed this, is, I guess I should back up. I spent a lot of my career prior to that doing troubleshooting. So at Alcatel, what I did was I was their corporate person, corporate technical person, who, if there was a problem in a line or we needed to source something that was something the US had a special knowledge in and Europe didn't have, I went out there and found it, I did it. It was a lot of fiber optic stuff, which is low technology now. At the time, it was pretty important. And so what you learn, and another thing that they would have me do is there's a problem with some, let's say that we did a lot of space satellite work. And so if there was a product, like I can remember one product problem we had with Qualcomm where they were building something for us for a VSAT system. And I had to go out there and I had to walk into a meeting with a whole bunch of people in it and basically troubleshoot figuring out what was going to go on with the program and whether we could save this, right? You have to develop the skills to be able to problem solve really well, which means you have to limit your risks. And the thing about pivoting, how many people here have ever read Steve Blank's book, The Entrepreneur Handbook? Okay.
Got one up there.
It is, if there's one book you read and you really want to know what's important, I would read it. So what I learned, I read that book, or read pieces of that book, and what I realized was the things that have made me successful in what I'm doing, he talks about.
So who's Steve Blank for the benefit of those who haven't read, and what?
I actually, I know limited amount about it, but maybe you,
So Steve Blank is a serial entrepreneur who's codified some of the things that entrepreneurs do systematically that leads to success. And so this is what you're thinking about, right?
So what happened was I recognized in his book, what he did was he looked at what companies succeeded and what companies didn't succeed, and he took the characteristics of the entrepreneurs that succeeded and tried to basically give you kind of a cookbook, handbook way. It's really not an exciting book to read, but it's very useful. So what you find and what he talks about is you have to basically, let's say you're designing code, which is really relatively easy to do. You're designing some app. The idea is you want to risk very small amounts and figure out if you're on the right direction. The problem is we all think that the world, I can think of many things that I thought would be really awesome with my product. But we are not necessarily perfect predictors of what the rest of the world cares about. We have our own preferences, et cetera, et cetera. And so what Steve Blank teaches you to do is essentially take a very basic version of what you think will work. Don't spend a lot of money on it. Spend a very small amount of money and then go out and throw it out to the world. And if people like it, they will play with it. You have to definitely get it, out there enough, like say this class, say everybody go try this app. Go ahead.
So did you do this with your product at Cearna?
No, I didn't, but I do it with my marketing stuff. I
why
couldn't.
didn't you, and what's made you
I
change?
couldn't do it with the product because of the fact of the FDA regulations. It didn't allow me to. But what I did do is I thought a lot. So the product actually came out, surprisingly enough, they love it. I mean, the box design, everything I got lucky. Let me just put it out there. I got lucky, okay? But what we do is we do it with our marketing stuff. So I was talking to you on the phone the other day, and we recently did a pivot. So our product is phenomenal plastic surgery. So there's eye and nose lid surgeries that we brought this wonderful product out for, and it can reduce recovery by about 50%. So if it normally takes you...
Are we talking about effectively plastic surgery for your face, nose jobs, and things like that? Okay.
Yep. So if you get your nose broken, you have to have it fixed. So this would go underneath the eyes, and it would work on it. So great product. And we were seeing the docs taking forever to adopt it. But I'm at a conference recently, and these docs are like, oh my God, this works great for injectables. And what injectables are, you guys don't need them. They're basically where they go and put something, well, you probably know Botox. Probably you've heard of Botox. So it's one of them. There's also one called Restylane. Well, those will bruise sometimes. And what we found was that the docs were crazy excited about it because they'll have people that would have come in 2 to 3 times, always bruised. They put our stuff on afterwards, and this next injection time that the person comes in, and the person doesn't bruise, they were thrilled by it.
So who's buying your product? The doctors?
The doctors are buying the product.
So they're your customers.
The doctors are customers, and our patients are the customers. It's kind of a mixture. Mm-hmm. So the difference is, and this is the pivot that you have to listen to, what pivoting talks about, always listen to your customer. And what we saw was, yeah, it was designed for surgery, and it's way overkill for injectables. But the injectables made my customers happy. It made the people using it, they would walk back into the doctor's office going, oh my God, I can't believe that I didn't bruise.
So the doctors are more incentivized then to use the
doctors are more
product.
incentivized. So that's when we pivoted. But then it doesn't stop there. So we started a pivot, but this is where we did what they call the minimally viable program, okay?
What does that mean?
So the minimally viable program in our world is a marketing sheet, which is really basic. It's not spent, we didn't spend like $500 to $1,000 to make it beautiful. We just put out the minimum information. In a program, it's basically, in a program, it's basically the very bare bones of what you think people will care about, not with all the bells and whistles, because you got to figure out if they care first. So in our marketing, we first go out, and our guy goes out, and everybody's excited. Oh my God, you can really get bruising to go away completely? He comes back, gives a presentation to the board. He's like, it's awesome. These people are really excited about this. 2 weeks later, we're not hearing any response. And we know from past experience, when people see this work, we get emails going, oh my God, I can't believe this worked. And I said to Mark, who is my director of sales, I said, something's wrong. And so we went back, and what we were realizing is, in the cosmeceutical world, in the cosmetic world, people promise that I will look like I'm your age with all the creams and stuff that they have. They're used to being promised stuff that's actually not factually true. So what we did in the next pivot was, okay, we're going to guarantee it. So now we go out and say, we will guarantee that if you use our product and you do an injectable, you will not bruise.
When you guarantee, what does that effectively do?
It changes the game in our particular world, because when you've been promised the world and nobody's willing to stand behind it, then it changes and puts us into a completely different space. People will be like, you really are willing to guarantee? And we've actually used it now in the Chicagoland area. By the way, this pivot's really recent. It's only like a couple months old. We've used it on or I should say, so the docs will choose bruisers. So they will go out and go to their patients, and we always have them try three patients, right? And so they will pick out what I would do. I'd pick out my really, really big bruisers. Of 68 people that have always bruised before, 67 of them no longer bruised.
That's incredible return.
Then, and if you think about the stats on that, anybody that's stats, it's a hugely, hugely positive stats. I mean, the stats on there, we use p-values, it's hugely different. And that's why we can make the guarantee. And so we'll maybe give away 1 every 100, doesn't matter. It's so much different. It allowed people to believe us. So we have this first major pivot to go into the injectable world. And then you have all these subtle little pivots. But one of the things I also talked to Mark about is you also have to minimize your risk. Mark, my sales guy, wanted to go out to every single person the first week. And I'm like, no, you go out to 20. The reason you go out to 20 is you limit your risk. When we first went out the first time and didn't have the guarantee, if he'd gone to everyone in Chicago, then we got to go back and say, oh, by the way, now we're guaranteeing it. Whereas if you limit your risk to only 20, figure out what the response is on them, go out to your next 20, go out to your next 20, it allows you to keep iterating as often as you need to.
So you like solving problems.
I love solving problems.
And do you think that's part of the reason for your success as an entrepreneur?
I think that solving problems is part and parcel of the entire pivoting process.
How?
It's an excellent question. Every single time, the thing that you'll know as an entrepreneur is what you think you're going to do, you will have to modify. No matter how well you and how smart and how capable and how many times you ask people questions, when you get out there, you will recognize that it is different. And so only by being able, one of the things Steve Blank says is if you are afraid to fail, you will. And that's a very powerful statement because essentially if you're one of those people that is afraid of failing and always has to be right all the time, it's not the right place for you because you always have to be willing to question what you started out with. If I had stuck on doing the eyelid surgery and the nose job surgery and not looked at the injectables, which is not what I designed it for, we wouldn't be where we are today. Every single step of the way, there's lots of things, especially in the development of the product, actually, where I thought things were going to be one way, and only by sitting down and doing that problem solving did I figure it out. So everything you do on pivoting, it's all about problem solving.
So you've talked about taking two different things and putting them together, sort of innovation as diversity or diversity as innovation. What do you mean by that, and how does experimentation come into the process of being an entrepreneur? So
it comes into it as both in the development. So it depends, because some of the people are from Ross and some people are from the technical and probably from areas not even that way. So the technical one, I think it's pretty clear. I mean, you absolutely have to have that innovation to do something somebody else hasn't, otherwise you don't have a product. You know, no one's going to pay you for something that's not innovative if it's been done 15 times. But even in the marketing, innovation in marketing is huge. Understanding what your customers want and having the ability to put it in a different way. If I'd not innovated to the concept of, okay, these guys aren't believing what we're saying, so how can we come across as we're really standing behind our product? Okay, a guarantee. It's not done in our world. Guarantees are not done in medical world. No way, not drugs. It's not like, you know, I was just going to make a comment. I can't use that example. Never mind.
Now they want it.
Allegra, I don't know, with some other drug, I was going to say, can't verify your drugs. You just don't hear that people are going to say that your latest sinus infection, whatever drug is going to work, your antibiotic's going to work. People don't guarantee that. But
there's this process in innovation of putting things that you wouldn't normally put together, and that being a creative process. Right?
It's definitely the creative process. It's understanding. I think that one of my skills over time is I don't think the way other people do. I generally, and it doesn't matter, you'll find, that's another thing you'll know, you'll recognize the entrepreneur in yourself when you're always that person who, whether it's where you're going that evening, how do you get from point A to point B, you will come up with this really unusual solution that people don't normally come up with. And that's that putting things together and recognizing what's out there.
So you're saying entrepreneurs are odd?
Yeah, definitely.
So put us in the mind of Dr. Pollock as a student at the University of Michigan. Did you ever imagine that you'd be an entrepreneur?
I've told people a million times, if anyone would have told me that I was doing what I'm doing now, I probably would have bet my entire first year salary, which I really needed at that time, and told them there's no way.
So what do you have to say to the students here as they're thinking about and charting their career and opportunities for success? Do you have a 10-year plan, a 5-year plan? Do you just wing it?
I think the most important thing that I think is understand yourself. If you decide to go this path, understand if you've got those skills that really it's right. Because it's really good to go work for a big company. It's not a bad thing. And if it's not, it will make you happier if you really look at yourself and say, is this the right thing for me? I definitely, and I've worked with a lot of people have come and tried to work for the company, and if you like to have structure, you will be happier in a big company. If you don't like structure and you like chaos, and you don't like it when things are the same all the time, then you will want to be an entrepreneur potentially. So look at yourself really well, and then really spend a lot of time thinking about what you're going to do. Do the minimally viable MVP, and see if what you have flies. But risk small amounts each time, because you don't want to spend 3 years developing something and find out it's not something that really plays in the market.
Have you seen that happen?
I have not personally, but I've definitely heard of, I can think of, because we've got startup groups in Chicago, and there's a guy who did this exact thing, something related to light bulbs, and went out and found out something, I don't remember exactly, but he did this thing. And he's like, I went out in the market and I found out that my assumptions, actually that's one of the other things I wanted to talk about. The most important thing I learned as an engineer was always verify your assumptions, and sometimes you can do a 1-hour test to just verify if you're going in the right direction. It won't tell you for sure, but it gives you like an 80-20 idea on whether it's right. Spend that time. If he'd gone and visited his customers a year or two before, it would have taken him, a day? He would have saved maybe 2 years of development of something that
So we're back to the discovery of customers, or Steve Blank calls customer discovery, and the importance of saying, well, what is it, in the case of your doctors and their patients, what is it that they really need to solve a problem for them?
And what's most important to them?
Can you share with us a little bit about Chicago and why you decided to start your company there, and the value of starting a company in that part of the country?
So I started it for a very, very important reason. I live there, which
Great.
is a good reason. I will tell you, we have a very strong, there's 1871, which is this very, very cool space that's at the Merchandise Mart, and they're actually going to start a biotech one, which I will hopefully be part of. I really would like to move my office into the city. But it's a very vibrant community, and you just have these people with these awesome ideas. And so you will like it, and it's a city. I think it definitely, if you want to stay anywhere in the Midwest, it's definitely the place to go. So.
And your company, you talked about TeleTV having a huge budget, being a fairly large startup. What size is your company now?
As far as revenue, or as far as
people?
Okay, so we have 5 people. Sales manager, like an inside sales guy, me, a marketing guy, and then just an office person.
And if you're forecasting 5-10 years down the road, where do you project your growth and opportunities at this point?
So we have huge growth potential. Our market, if you can think of bruising, pain, swelling, sprain, strains, it's huge. sports industry, just the University of Michigan football, it kills me because I know I could actually make them better. Because we actually, one of the first uses was an ACL, and we actually had an ACL where the person, after they blew it, could walk on it 2 days later without any pain. So we're talking major sports stuff. But anyway, so just within the aesthetics world, we expect our revenue in 5 years to be $74 million. That's not including sports or any of the other divisions.
Excellent, excellent.
Yeah.
So do you have any plans for current product development and new products and things like that? What does that look like in a 5-person company? How are you doing that? What big companies called research and development?
See, what's fortunate about us, all the research and development's kind of been done. Our scalability is very, very easy. All we have to do is do the formulations, and like, for instance, we have a product that'll come out on facelifts, and we'll have one for breast augmentation. All it is just deciding what we want to put in it. We know on the facelift, but the facelift, the biggest issue is a mechanical question in that they do work in here when they do a facelift. We don't know if we're going to need to put a pad here, and then when you move it around, it might fall off. This stuff naturally adheres, so it doesn't fall off. So that'll be the aesthetics world. Later, we'll do an over-the-counter, so it's very likely that you guys will use one of our products at some point.
How?
Well, if you fall down, if you hurt yourself. It will keep you from bruising, and then the over-the-counter one, a sprain or strain. If you sprain your ankle, I mean, my patients have been using the prototype version of this for years for their kids and for themselves.
So are any of your current customers in the sports world right now?
No, we elected not to go into that first. We elected to focus on plastics first.
Okay. And what would be required to go into that market?
Simply, the largest difficulty is just simply figuring out whether we put it on with an ACE bandage or how we put it on the adherence way. Yeah. That's it. It's not a lot of development. But one of the things you'll recognize, and one of the things that I needed to do, and a lot of people have complimented me, is if you have a product that's got a wide range like ours, it is hugely critical that you put blinders on.
What do you mean?
In other words, I could have spent millions and millions of dollars playing in all of these different markets and trying to bring out a lot of different products. What happens is that's the death of a lot of companies, because you have a limited amount of resources, it ends up costing a tremendous amount of money, and you never penetrate any one of them enough. And trust me, everybody's like, oh, my uncle works for the Bulls, why don't you do this? And I'm like, it's killing me not to, but I can't. I need to focus. Right. So we prove it out in the plastic surgery world. I know, by the way, it always takes longer than you expect. But we prove it out in the plastic surgery world, and then we go into the next markets, and we use the money we get from plastic surgeries to pay for the other markets.
So as we sort of wrap up here, you were a doctor of chiropractic medicine, and you're starting a company. How did you do that? Did you have to bootstrap it?
It's largely bootstrapped, but we also have outside investment.
And were you doing it simultaneous, or?
So the company was formed in 2010, but the first patent was filed in 2008. So yeah, in the beginning, I didn't plan on running the company. I figured, like, I don't know how to do this. You know, I really didn't think so. So I figured I would hire a CEO to do it. That didn't work out, and they're very expensive. And so what you end up doing is you end up just figuring it out every day. And by the way, if you do it, you will realize that you will have to develop skills. There's no way. Like, I had no idea I could do marketing. It's not that hard for me. I cannot do finance. Irritates me. Cannot do it. Don't like it. Hate numbers.
You have a finance person on your team then?
I have a finance person, yes.
Excellent. Well, do you have one last word for our students before we open it up for questions?
Just, if you've really got a good idea, ask lots of questions. Always listen to people you're talking to and your customers, and work really hard.
I'd like to take a few minutes to open up to a few questions if any student has them. The question is about the time it takes to go through the clinical trial process.
There was a monograph already in place that covered our product. So we were already covered by that monograph, so we didn't have to go through the classical phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 trialing. But I will tell you, if you have something that goes through that, It's about a 10-year process and about $50 to $100 million. So it's not minor at all, because that's the world I live in, and I don't live in it directly, but I work with a lot of people like that.
Question is about competitors with similar products.
And by the way, it's an excellent question. Our biggest competitor is ice, which is really nice. It is our biggest.
And cheap.
And cheap. No, it is our biggest competitor, and obviously not a big deal. There are some very, very weak Arnica products out there, but the efficacy is like night and day compared to ours, and there's not really any other drugs because we cover bruising, pain, and swelling, all three. You can get pain in some cases, like Celebrex and things like that, but the bruising and the swelling, there's really not anything out there, which is really kind of nice. But it's an excellent question.
The question is, did you ever abandon any projects? And if so, how did you know that was the thing to do?
That is really key, knowing when you need to abandon projects, because you waste so much money, if you don't learn to do that. And so that's a very, very good question, a very good point. We did, let me think about it, I abandoned products in the development process where there is a gel. So it's a gel sheet gel that lays on the skin and stays there for a long period of time. And I'm telling you, there is times I would just go home and cry because I'd be working on something and I think it would work. And she can actually identify with that because, I would just be like, I don't know where to go. I don't know how to go. What ends up happening is you get forced into doing it because things are just not working. And so most of the time it's pretty much slapped in your face. But again, with the product launch, we have really, since the development, we haven't done that, but we have re-emphasized. So we're not abandoning the surgery world, but we're really de-emphasizing it. And it was a recognition that it wasn't moving as fast as possible. That's the other thing, is take data. My sales guy would have waited for a really long time to realize that we weren't getting information back. But when you are used to, it's like, wait, I'm not getting data. Why am I not getting data if this is not normal? And so that's going to be the thing that's going to tell you that you need to abandon. Take data, and when it doesn't seem to be working properly, sit down, look around. What else do I need to do? What do I need to do differently? What do I need to do differently?
The question is about motivation. The product timeline for Dr. Pollock may be longer than some, and how does she stay motivated during that entire time?
Insanity. So one of the keys of an entrepreneur is the ability, it's a good question because I forgot to mention this, and you don't always know it, is your ability to believe that it's going to be okay even though everything is crashing around you. Somebody sent me something as a leader, and your job is to be the cheerleader for the entire company. For me, it was easier for me because this product I knew, because the prototype, because the long lead time for us was going from the prototype, which was essentially a messy infused gauze thing, to something in a gel, which is really slick and really nice. I always thought I could do it. And so that was good. We had some early successes, and huge failures made me cry, and then, successes. And so that was helpful. But knowing that the first one was so incredibly effective, and if I could just get it in a gel, that it'd be a product, would keep me going. But there's a lot of insanity in that. You've got to keep going and believe in that it's possible, and that's the only thing I can tell you. Not to say that every 3 months I wasn't just like, oh my God. So.
The question is about Dr. Pollock's marketing and how she identified channels for sales and marketing.
And he has just demonstrated he knows more about marketing terms than I do. So basically, from a marketing standpoint, and I would say that my knowledge of marketing more is about understanding people and understanding motivations on people. So I can know that a guarantee program plays. I can know that showing a picture where you have a line where the pads applied to here, and there's black here and it's white here, plays with people. As far as channels, I'm actually not, I'm trying to remember what that means, given that I've never taken a marketing class in my life before, but Basically, that is something where it's not that hard to figure out, especially since so for us, we simplified it. And we specifically did not go to the over-the-counter market for that specific reason. And that is, we have 2,700 docs who are our primary target, and it makes the channels a lot easier because we know how to reach them relatively directly through representatives that are already calling on them, as well as we know their names, we know how to contact them and stuff like that. So that we simplify, I guess the answer is we simplified our channel thing because we don't have a lot of money. Whereas when we go to over the counter, we chose not to do that because the channels are so huge. So I hopefully answered your question. Okay.
Dr. Pollock, you talked about luck earlier. I just want to say that the University of Michigan is really fortunate to have you as an alumnus. Thank you for spending time with us, and let's thank Dr. Pollock again.